Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 worst bad habits that every AoE2 player has. Now I've done a lot of coaching at various ELOs and I've really been picking up on a lot of these bad habits, and I'm noticing that multiple people are having these issues. I also see the same bad habits even up at the pro level and the semi-pro level, and so truly it's one of those things where we can all relate to them. So let me know in the comments how many of you guys have these bad habits and which ones do you have in your games. Starting right off with the list at number 5. At number 5, we've got not producing army or villagers specifically while taking fights. Now, everyone knows that producing villagers is good because the villagers will gather resources, and the more villagers we have, the better our economy. And then similarly for army, if we have resources in our stockpile, it's beneficial to just make the army, because army on the field, you can attack with it, you can defend, you can camp the important hills. Gives a lot of options available to you, and just keeping it in the stockpile instead, keeping the resources in the stockpile, doesn't really achieve much unless you're saving up for a specific technology. So not producing army or villagers at any stage of the game is usually a mistake, but of course players know to produce those, and where the mistake comes, and where I've seen it come a lot, is while fighting. Every single time players, especially at lower levels, take fights, they completely forget to check back to their base, to make villagers, to make new army. And I always tell them, think of it this way: if you take a fight and you lose the fight and you don't make units at home, you've got nothing to follow up with. But if you take the fight and you lose it, but you made units at home, then hey, you lost the fight. But he can't really punish you, he can't really attack you, because you have some units to back up and to, hold the ground and hold the fort while you build up for another attack potentially. So producing army and vills while fighting is such a bad habit, and to fix that, I got you guys some pro tips as well. You have to make villagers and army with all of your resources from the stockpile, then look for the fight. If your opponent is engaging on you, you back up with your army, produce vills and army at home, and then take the fight, or continue running away. Your choice. That is the way to go around this. Pro tip, you heard it here on the channel first. Moving on to number 4. At number 4, we've got running units into the town center of the opponent because you don't keep them on stand ground, or you just forget about them. And this has even happened to pro players like Leary in the Warlords, which happened recently, where he ran his meta arm under my town center and I got free value. Guys, in the early game, running units under a town center is the worst thing you can do, because garrisoning the town center, it has a lot of damage with villagers and it can destroy your units, which actually costs a lot in the early game because your economy isn't that big. And so we can't afford to lose units running under the town centers like that. And of course, the main reason this happens, especially at lower level where you guys are meta arm rushing, you guys have a few scouts, is that you don't keep your units on stand ground. Guys, the formations are there for a reason. They don't just look pretty, and you can set up a base with the units on stand ground as the guards outside of a gate and, just kind of make a nice scenery like that. They're also very useful in practical scenarios where you're attacking with small groups of units. Stand ground makes it so if you attack a unit, they attack that particular unit, and if you're not telling your units to attack something, they're going to stay in that spot. This is extremely useful because when your meta arms are not fighting the villagers you want them to fight, you don't want them to be chasing rogue vills and chasing an enemy scout or spearman and getting lured or baited into the enemy town center. That would be a proper disaster, and we want to avoid that by just keeping our small groups of units in the early game on stand ground. Moving on to number 3, we've got what might be considered a personal attack to Viper. Maybe he'll get offended by this, but I gotta say it anyways. We've got a lot of Viper fans out there as well, and listen, it's a bit of a plague. Quick walling is a disaster at all elos. Everybody's quick walling too much. It's not Fortnite, guys. If you want to make some fast walls, go play Fortnite. If you want to play some Age of Empires, let's bring the strategy games back. Let's bring the strategy element back. Stop quick walling. And hey, you might be thinking, oh, Hera, you're just a hater because you can't quick wall. Quick walling is good. The good players are all doing it, but listen, there's a time and a place for quick walling. That is true, but players have gotten really good at countering quick walling, and quick walling in general is not exactly something that comes for free. It takes a lot of actions, and it takes a lot of attention and a lot of practice to do a proper quick wall. And I've seen time and time again, I'm coaching guys from 1,000 elo, 800 elo, all the way up to 1,600 elo, and they're quick walling everything, while the rest of their base, there's fires everywhere. They're not producing, they're not defending with their army, they're not even bringing their army to go fight. They just start by quick walling and they focus 30 seconds on quick walling when they actually need to just bring their army to fight the enemy army in their base. So they end up taking all kinds of damage. And the worst part is quick walling is 50-50. Sometimes it works. And like I said, because people got so good against it, they just run their units and block you from quick walling. Most of the time, you just failed it anyways. So you're investing your time and attention, your resources on the buildings. And then after that, it's 50-50. And especially if you take that situation, apply it to like a 1200 elo, 1000 elo, 100 elo maybe, they just don't have the time and the speed to do the quick walling with the other fundamentals. So what I say, stop Stop quick walling. I can find tons of footage, even from Viper, who quick walls too much in tournaments, keeps all his vills idle, and the rest of the base needs attention. So even at the very top, even at the pros, I'm just using Viper as an example because I think he's the guy who's probably the best at quick walling, but still kind of overdoes it sometimes. And it's just not worth it most of the time. So what I say with quick walling, it's a skill. You keep it in your back pocket. It's like juggling, you know? You're at a family event. You're not going to juggle for half an hour in front of everyone. You're not going to juggle every 5 minutes. What you're going to do when there's everyone sitting down and having a coffee, you'll say, hey, I can juggle. You show them for 2 minutes. Everyone claps. Everyone's like, hey, that's pretty cool. And that's it. Nobody juggles for an hour straight. Nobody juggles every 5 minutes. That is what is happening with quick walling right now, and it's happening at all elos. Stop quick walling, start playing the game. Fundamentals first, juggling later. Moving on to number 2. At number 2, we've got a very bad habit. It's very small, but I've noticed it happening so often. And this also happens to pro players as well. It happens to me too. I'm guilty of this. And it's making houses well after 200 pop. All right. This always happens. This is how it goes down. You're making houses because like you're naturally playing the game very fast and you're making houses and whatever. And then you get to 200 pop and then you have some idle vills on the sides that were making houses and you just continue making houses. And like houses are not expensive, but they're not free. They're still 25 wood a pop. So like we're making the houses and then they're good, they're useful, and then we hit a point where it's 200 pop, but no one realizes, and we just continue making houses. And you could argue that it's good to have extra houses in case you lose a castle, you lose some houses, and all that. Like, sure, maybe, but let's be honest, we're just forgetting that we're 200 pop, and we're just making extra houses, and it's a bad habit, but it's one that's hard to break. I felt it was still worth mentioning, and I've seen it happen time and time again of players, even pros, making a ton of houses after 200 pop. Of course, the resources are better spent elsewhere, but in the heat of the moment, it's kind of hard to blame us, and blame anyone that might have this problem. All right, moving on to the honorable mention here. This is a tiny one. This is a tiny thing. It's not even a bad thing, but it's hitting the board twice instead of once with your villagers to lure it. The reason for this is because back in the day, like before Definitive Edition came out, you actually had to lure the board by hitting it twice with the vill. If you hit it once, it would go back. And so pretty much everyone who played back in the day would get in the habit of shooting the board twice. That was how it's done, even in HG and Voobly in the original game. You hit the board twice with a villager, and that's the only way to lure it. In DE, nowadays, you can lure it with only one vill, or one hit with the vill, one arrow shot. However, old habits die hard, as we all know, and there's a lot of people out there that are still hitting the board with 2 shots instead of 1. And hey, listen, it's not a big deal, but I thought I'd mention it, and let me know in the comments if you are guilty of this tiny, teeny, weeny bad habit. Next up, and the number 1, the final bad habit I think every pro, not every pro, every AoE2 player has, and even some of the pros. Number 1 bad habit, floating resources, especially gold in the mid game. Guys, this is a plague, especially gold in the mid game. There's so many players, it happens to everyone, including myself, so many players that this happens to. We tend to float a lot of gold in the mid game. We're talking like 1,000 gold when you have only like 100 food and 50 villagers, right? We just have 1,000 gold, we don't know what to spend it on. This usually results in us making a market, buying some food or buying some wood to help balance it out using that tool instead of naturally balancing it out like how it's properly meant to be. This is a hard one to break out. I'm not gonna lie, this is a really hard thing to fix, but it is a bad habit I'm sure a lot of you guys have. And like I said, even in tournaments, pro players, there's a ton of cases where gold is just being floated by the thousands and no one really knows what to do with it. Of course, hoarding gold in the late game is fantastic. If you have 4k gold in the late game, you're 200 pop, oh, that's great. That's great. That gold's gonna help you stall out your opponent, siege them down and all that good stuff. But in the mid game, you don't need extra gold. You don't need to hoard it because then you're just playing inefficiently, and that 1,000 gold that's sitting there doing nothing, it would be much better if that was 500 food, 500 gold, because that means that's what, 8 knights on the field. We take those 8 knights. That's gonna do it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you guys did, and I'll catch you guys next time. Also, make sure to check me out on Twitch, link in the description. We'd love to see new viewers on the live stream and support me there. That's it from me though. Peace, and until the next video. Laters.